We were all taught that maps are an unchangeable record of human history. We were lied to. In the heart of Pennsylvania's coal country, a bustling American town with its own streets, neighborhoods, churches, schools, and over 1,000 citizens didn't just collapse. It was systematically erased, wiped from every globe, every atlas, and every government document on Earth. The official story says it was an accident, a random underground mine fire that simply got out of hand. They told us the town became unsafe. They told us the evacuation was for public safety. End of story. Except, the declassified files tell a completely different story. Towns don't just vanish from official state maps and postal registries by accident. The most disturbing part isn't the fire burning beneath the pavement for over 60 years. The most disturbing part is the calculated choice made behind closed doors to let it burn, because fighting it would cost too much. For decades, suppressed warnings were buried. Deliberate denials were issued, all to protect a multi-million-dollar political and economic reality that was too expensive to admit. You've probably seen the photographs. Cracked highways splitting open like wounds, toxic smoke rising from empty streets, snow melting in unnatural circles, even in the dead of winter. But those images hide the real tragedy. Before Centralia was turned into a ghost town, it was a home, a tight-knit mining community where generations raised families, attended Sunday services, and built lives around the coal that both gave them purpose and ultimately took everything away. What happened there was not merely a natural disaster. It was something far darker, a slow-motion social experiment in abandonment. Today, we are opening the forbidden files. Today, we are exposing the city they tried to delete and the evidence they spent decades trying to hide. The official story begins on May 27th, 1962. A small fire. That's how it's usually described. Workers cleaning up the town landfill before Memorial Day celebrations set trash ablaze in an old strip mining pit. The fire crews doused the flames that night, or so they believed. But they had failed to see the devil in the details. The fire hadn't been killed. It had simply moved. It slipped into an exposed coal seam, a hidden artery of fuel, and plunged into the labyrinth of abandoned mine tunnels beneath the town. The surface burn was over. The subterranean nightmare had just begun. Almost immediately, warnings appeared in reports. Engineers and local officials knew the risks of underground coal fires. The solutions existed. The fire was dangerous, but it could still be stopped. Yet the response from those in power was hesitant. But the men in suits, far from the smoke and heat, saw only numbers. Every warning from engineers was met with a shrug. Every solution was measured by a price tag too high to justify. They didn't see a town. They saw a ledger they needed to balance. And year by year, the fire found new seams of anthracite coal, fuel that had lain underground for millions of years. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, the nightmare began to surface. Smoke began creeping into basements. Residents reported unusual, suffocating warmth rising through their floors. Vegetation died in patches, its roots cooked from below. The ground itself felt alive, pulsing with heat in places where winter snow refused to stick. Still, life in Centralia pushed forward because it had to. Families celebrated holidays. Children played in yards that unknowingly sat directly above an active inferno. People trusted the system would protect them. They trusted that someone, somewhere, was coming to save them. Then came a moment that shattered any remaining complacency. In November 1979, local gas station owner and former Mayor John Cottington noticed a steam rising from a vacant lot next to his property. Concerned, he lowered a dipstick into his underground fuel tanks. It came out scalding hot. He lowered a thermometer on a string. The reading, 172 degrees Fahrenheit, then rising to over 180. An ocean of explosive gasoline sat directly above an active subterranean fire, ignored by regulators for years. The danger was no longer theoretical. It was right beneath their feet, waiting for a single spark. It wasn't a sudden explosion. That would have been mercy. Centralia died in slow motion. Imagine waking up every day, not knowing if the ground beneath your kitchen floor was currently a furnace. Families watched their town wither like a limb losing circulation. It wasn't just the fire. It was the betrayal of being told, "Don't worry," while the officials were actively negotiating the price of your erasure behind closed doors. They didn't just abandon the town. They experimented on its people, forcing them to live in a state of psychological torture, waiting for a sinkhole that everyone knew was coming. Then, the moment that shattered everything. 12-year-old Todd Domboski. He was playing in his backyard, and the earth didn't just crack, it opened. An abyss literally vomiting toxic, sulfurous smoke. He was dangling over a hellish chasm, his fingertips the only thing between him and the burning coal seam below. In that heartbeat, the lies stopped. The government's "it's under control" narrative turned into a confession. They had known this was coming, and they had gambled with the lives of their own citizens for the sake of the bottom line. What have you lost then? A house? No. You've lost the proof that your life ever existed. When they demolished the buildings, they didn't just take the wood and stone. They took the shared history, the generational stories, the home that existed in the collective memory of the residents. That is the true tragedy. It wasn't the fire that destroyed Centralia. It was the calculated choice to treat a community like a line item on a budget report. The fire destroyed the infrastructure of Centralia. But what truly broke the people was the aftermath. Watching their world die, one moving truck, one condemned house, one bulldozed block at a time. Imagine standing on your porch as your lifelong neighbors load up their lives and drive away for the last time. Their house sits dark. Weeks later, it's demolished. Weeds overtake the yard. First, it was the families on the edge of town, silently packing their lives into cardboard boxes. Then, the silence began to creep inward. The house next door gone. The playground down the street, empty. Centralia wasn't just dying. It was being erased, one empty window at a time. The silence grew deeper. The lights at night became fewer. Pennsylvania Route 61, the main four-lane highway through town, began to warp and crack violently, emitting deadly carbon monoxide. The asphalt literally melted and split open into a hellish chasm. The government's response? They didn't repair it. They built a bypass around the damaged section, spray-painted warnings, and abandoned the original road to the fire. By the 1990s, Centralia was a shadow of itself. The zip code was discontinued in 2002. Only a handful of defiant residents remained, fighting bitter legal battles to stay in the homes they loved until the state eventually allowed the last few to live out their lives there. Today, only a tiny number of those holdouts remain. Most of the town is a blank space of overgrowing fields. The fire still burns underground, projected to continue for decades or even centuries more. Centralia forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. How long can human beings live beside a growing disaster before it starts to feel normal? We are remarkably good at adapting, even a horror when it arrives gradually. We hope, we compromise, we look away, until one day the ground opens beneath our feet. This is why Centralia feels so unsettling. It wasn't a single dramatic catastrophe. It was death by 1,000 small surrenders. Now that you know this story, you'll never look at a map the same way again. Because Centralia isn't really just a ghost town. It's a warning about what happens when we choose convenience and cost over courage and truth. And warnings are only useful if someone finally listens. If an entire town can slowly disappear while the world watches, what else are we allowing to disappear right now? Centralia was a cover-up of a physical location. But it is nothing compared to the technological secrets that have been completely wiped from our timeline. To uncover those hidden histories with us, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We'll see you in the next file.